calculate, even with generous rebates, this typical starting point for a new electric vehicle is in excess of $30,000. Assuming the full $4,500 of rebates, your starting point then is about $26,000 plus state and local taxes. You're looking at a car payment somewhere in the mid $500 range to begin with. How do you expect low-income drivers to be able to afford that?
So ultimately, this is an evolution of the original initial drive program that was made available. What we've also inserted into the incentives is limiting in terms of new electric vehicles capped at up to $60,000 for a vehicle, and then used up to $40,000. We recognize that that may not bridge the gap for all consumers, but we wanted to have an evolution from the initial program that in terms of an electric vehicle for $100,000, those people don't necessarily potentially need the incentives. So we've reduced the eligibility in terms of the price of the vehicle for consumers. And again, we're providing additional incentives in terms of those that are income eligible. Again, all those details will be posted on our website. So we believe we're heading in the right direction, having an evolution of this program from the initial one to see how many more Rhode Islanders we can attract and be able to participate in the program.
Well, lately, one quick follow-up. By the way, that doesn't answer the question. But my other question is, what is the per mile cost, given roughly $5 a gallon gas prices? What is the per mile cost differential between, say, a brand new version of this and a brand new economy car?
Per mile cost, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I'd be more than happy to follow up with you afterwards with our team that's involved with the implementation of this program.
And just ultimately, energy is generated by the use of carbon-based fuel, isn't it?
So we are gradually and accelerating the shift towards renewable energy. So our goal is to ultimately have more of these EV vehicles charged with the renewable resources. As some of you know, the legislature passed 100% renewable energy standard by 2033. We believe that policy tied with this will start to accelerate more EV infrastructure, including what's being installed currently, but also the federal dollars that will be leveraged to tie more of those charging stations towards renewable energy resources. So ultimately, this funding, the $1.25 million, is coming from the Office of Energy Resources within the funding mechanisms that we receive either through the General Assembly, through our energy laws, or dollars that we receive through the federal government. The roughly $23 million, that is focused purely on the electric vehicle infrastructure that will be deployed along 95 other locations in the state. So ultimately, that's federal dollars from the federal infrastructure law. Each state was allocated a certain dollar amount to deploy EV charging infrastructure within their respective state. The governor introduced his legislation to establish the framework of how that program would be managed by the Office of Energy Resources in consultation with the Department of Transportation and the Department of Environmental Management.
Rebates don't affect the 5,000 plus already operative electric vehicles.
Correct. This EV rebate incentive will be only available to new EV vehicles purchased on July 7th or thereafter. There are specific requirements in terms of documentation that will need to be submitted to our office to process the rebate payment.
What's the rationale?
So ultimately, as the governor has mentioned multiple times, we strongly believe that we have to address climate change and implement the Act on Climate. Transportations play a significant role in our greenhouse gas emissions. We believe this program plays a role in reducing our transportation emissions to achieve the objectives of the Act on Climate law.
Forgive me if it's been mentioned, but how many charge points of that are across the state? Is there a plan to grow?
I don't have the specific number in my brain. My colleague Sarah, if you go to my raising your hand, she's our electric vehicle charging station guru. I'd be happy to get those numbers to you guys.
Lovin, you want to buy one of those cars?
Eventually. Eventually, yes. I think that's what's going to happen. You got the, you got what, 2030 by 2035, Ford is, that's all they're going to be making, right? Is these, and that's why, to answer Pat's question, it's one step at a time, and we start the work now to make sure that we're prepared to take advantage of all the opportunities that are coming down the line. Yes, Steve.
Are there any currently in the state fleet or any plans to buy any EVs for the state?
Yes, I think that we've started. We announced, which is not necessarily state fleet, but RIPTA is part of the state, programs. They're going to be buying buses. We're going to be buying. Yes, and our plan is to move into that area.
Is that
I think it's in the planning stage at the moment, but I know that we're, you know, as we buy vehicles, that we're buying electrified vehicles or hybrid type of vehicles.
So Mary, you call around to car dealerships. A lot of the cheaper electric vehicle models have wait lists to get a, you know, a $30,000 Chevy Volt. I mean, how quickly do you think this rollout will actually help when people who maybe hear about these rebates and are interested then have to go on a long wait list to get a car?
Yeah, so I mean, we know that there's a wait list on multiple items, right? The supply chain issues are out there; they're real. But again, we're starting something. People are going to be taking advantage of it, and if it fits into that schedule, they're going to take advantage of it. But if we waited until the supply chain was available, then we would have lost a great deal of opportunity. So we're launching this now, and to make sure that we get ahead of the curve.
Do you have a goal for how many new electric vehicles you'd like to see Rhode Islanders buy the next year,
Yeah.
the first year of this program?
I asked Chris that question. I think that the first round, I think we got a 250. I think this round will be closer to 500.
Last question, Pat.
Question: are the charge points that's going to be the official system for the state, non-Tesla system?
Yeah, so I know the Department of Transportation hosted, I think, a couple of webinars last week regarding the preparation for the filing of the plan to the federal government regarding the $22+ million. Ultimately, how that gets deployed is still being under discussion in terms of the type of EV charging infrastructure and the models that may be available. The first step is we have to get approval through the federal government.
And what are those going to be free of charge?
Depending on the location, again, we're looking at both municipal park and rides, and then eventually, again, because this funding is spread out over 3 to 4 years, eventually into private parking lots. So those details will need to be figured out in terms of which charging stations are free, which ones will require a fee depending on the location.
And the final follow-up, with charge point, you have to be banked. And I know that's a term that's foreign to perhaps people in government, but there's a significant part of Rhode Island that is unbanked. You require credit cards. Is there going to be any accommodation made to those folks who don't have a traditional banking account, therefore cannot register with charge point?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I know those details are being fleshed out with our team. Again, Sarah's deeply involved with the preparation of filing the federal plan. I know the Department of Transportation, I think, hosted 3 webinars over the last week as part of the governor's budget article in terms of the EV charging. It does require some additional public outreach and comment periods regarding the development of this plan, which we plan to pursue in the upcoming month.